Because my microphone was muted. See, that's why you should have heard the things I was saying. It was amazing. It was amazing. Because my microphone
hello,
was
Aruba.
muted.
Hello, Germany.
3 a.m. I said. See,
hello. Thank you for tuning in.
You should have heard the things I was
So,
saying. It was amazing.
In this stream,
hello,
Aruba. Hello,
I'm going to be
Germany.
focusing
3 a.m. I said.
on the Blackbox
Hello,
log
thank you for
analysis.
tuning in.
And I'm not going to be doing too many questions. I'm going to try to pay attention to the chat. I have a little trouble paying attention to the chat anyway because look over here for the chat, look over there, talk about this, manage the live stream. It's a lot to do all at once. But if you have questions about look over here for the chat, look over there, talk about this. No idea why that would Manage
be.
the live stream. It's a lot to do all at once.
But
I didn't do anything.
Questions about
over here for the chat,
boy.
look over there.
I have
talk
no
about
idea
this.
why that would
Manage
be.
the live stream. It's a lot to do all at once. But
I didn't do anything.
questions about over here for the chat.
Oh yeah, I have
no
idea why that would
Manage
be.
the live stream. Check. I don't. Yes. Yeah. Is it check? No, there it is again. What's going on? Oh, I know what's going on. There, I got it. I got it. So, yeah, I figured it out. I fixed it. Yeah, so eventually I'll get good at this live streaming thing, and I'll seem like a pro, but I'm still pretty new at it. I'm trying something different today, because I wanted to be able to schedule the event so you guys could see it coming. And as a result, I'm using a different interface in YouTube's streaming interface than I'm used to, and there was a button I needed to click to prevent that feedback. So now I've done it, and now I think we should be ready to go. So I'm going to be doing just the Blackbox log analysis is what I was saying. I will not be taking random questions from the peanut gallery as much as it will pain me to not do that. I'm going to try and focus on this. And if you have questions about or comments about the Blackbox logs, that's a different story. That's fine. But I'm going to try and keep it focused. And in that, yeah, thank you very much for watching. I like doing this. In that vein, let me go ahead and get started on the first one, which is gdelpu, who has a LeSam 210 with little B 20 amp ESCs. Oh, I remember when little Bs were the best. They're not the best anymore, but they were the first BL Heli ESC with dedicated gate drivers, I think. That's what I remember thinking at the time. If I'm wrong now, I was wrong then. And I bought them, and I was very happy. That was the first time Little B, or the first time BL Heli really started to make inroads on KISS. Hold on 1 second. My mic stand is misbehaving. Let's see if that works. So, Cobra Motors, good. I can see you built this copter 6 or 8 months ago because, Little B ESCs, Cobra Motors. This was the absolute cream of the crop, except for this frame. Why you got a LeSam frame with all this other nice gear? There's nothing wrong with the LeSam frame, but you weren't skimping on the motors or the ESCs. So I wonder why you skimped on the frame. Oh well, who knows? Not a big deal. Let's take a look at the logs. Nope. Sorry, hold on. There we go. You can tell what I was doing earlier today. Yeah, Little Bs are great. I mean, they're not sort of top the line anymore, but they're great. They're still fine. All right, so we're just looking for general tuning advice. And you are running Betaflight 290. And I'm glad to hear that you're running Betaflight 290 because I got to tell you guys, I have been looking at Betaflight 3.0 Blackbox logs with the new Betaflight PID controller, and I'm not really sure sometimes what I'm looking at. Like, it's like there's all this weird noise in the P term that didn't used to be there, and I kind of feel lost. So we're going to see some logs tonight that are Betaflight 3.0 logs, and I'm not really going to know what to say about them. But fortunately, this one is a Betaflight 2.90 log, so I can have something to say about it. Let's see. So your PIDs are pretty standard, 4, 5, a little higher on pitch than on roll because the copter's weight is more centralized on the roll axis and more spread out on the pitch axis. So you need a little more P gain on pitch than on roll. That's normal. People used to think, and some still do think, that it has to do with the motor layout, but it actually has to do with the weight distribution, not the motor layout. And then a yaw gain of about 8. You know, that's all well and good. So let's take a look then at what we could see about your tune. And the first thing we'll look at, as usual, is the gyros. And we'll zoom out. And we can see that the gyros are very thin, meaning that the copter is very noise-free. A thin gyro line means the copter is relatively vibration-free. But Blackbox Explorer is applying smoothing to the lines and making them look thinner than they really are. So if we press the S key, I'm going to do that now, we will turn off smoothing in Blackbox Explorer and see the gyro data as it really is. And you can see they got a little bit thicker. Here's with the smoothing turned on, and here's with it turned off. And I'm pressing the S key there. But it's still not very thick, all in all. So this is a relatively noise-free copter. Now, you're not actually seeing the raw gyro data here, right? Because in Betaflight, there's also more filtering. There's the D term low pass filter, and there's the yaw gyro filter, and there is the regular, there we go, the regular gyro filter. So in fact, the raw gyro data is even noisier than this, but this is what the PID controller is actually seeing. And so this is a reasonable thing to take as a benchmark for how noise-free the copter is, especially because as we look, the filtering values here are standard. It's 100 hertz, which is very high value. That's almost like no filtering at all. Not quite, but pretty close. So if you have nice thin gyro lines with the standard filters in Betaflight 291, your copter is relatively noise-free, and that's a good thing. Kevin, you ask, farther speed motors have more leverage. quadmcfly wrote an article about this. And if I can find it quickly, I'm going to point you to it. Articles, yeah. He made he's the one who convinced me. So you can read it, and I would just parrot his argument to you. But instead, I'll let you read his argument. The argument that he makes, you need to read this. Right here. Do what I did. Go to Mini Quad Test Bench. Go to Articles and read The Truth About Custom Motor Mixes. Okay? Read that. The gist of his argument is that a motor that's further away has to move further in terms of linear distance in order to achieve the same angular distance, but it also creates more torque because it has a longer lever arm, and his argument is that those two things essentially cancel each other out. So the further motor has more torque, but it also has to move further, and those things cancel each other out. Whereas the weight distribution has a much stronger effect. You can read this. It convinced me. I'm not an expert on mechanics, and there could be some fatal flaw. If you're a mechanical engineer or somebody like that, and you read this and you go, oh, hold on, he missed something. Because as we all know, just because the formulas work out doesn't mean you're right. You know, you might not be interpreting the formulas correctly. But take a look at that and see what you think. That's where I got my information. Weight distribution is what matters, not so much the motor position. As long as the motors are rectangular and flat. If the motors are not rectangular, if you have wide motors in front and narrow motors in the back, that's a different story. But as long as the motors are rectangular and flat, it's weight distribution more than anything else that matters. Okay, enough about that. So this copter is relatively noise-free. Good. Let's take a look then. And I see immediately in here that there is some oscillation. And if we look at the roll gyro here, do you see how it goes up and down here? And you can see the waves. So a very high frequency noise or oscillation will blend together into a blur and look like just one big fat line. And that's what we're seeing here when we look at the fat line. A lower frequency oscillation will look like an S shape or a wave shape. And when you see that, that could be a tuning issue. In general, high frequency stuff, we think of it as noise, and lower frequency stuff or middle frequency stuff can be tuning. Okay. Yeah, Logan, if you're gonna tune the notch filter, then you definitely want to be looking at the raw gyro data, not the filtered gyro data. The filtered gyro data is okay, but the raw gyro data is better. Okay, so we'll go look at the roll axis. And we'll see if we can figure out what those oscillations are. And now I'm going to turn smoothing back on, because with the smoothing off, it just is such a sort of a, you see how we got these, look what we got here. High frequency wiggles and jiggles, right? And you see how there's a wave here? That's the low frequency noise or signal. And the high frequency signal is imposed on top of it, and it's hard to interpret what's going on there. So if we turn the filtering back on, it helps us see it a little better what's going on there. And there's even still some of that high frequency component present. We might even, heck, try filtering a little more. And now we can get rid of some of that noise and see the underlying, like what's really going on there. Anthony, the Betaflight 3.0 defaults do fly very, very well. And they fly better than many people would ever have tuned their copter, depending on your skill as a tuner. I've found that most copters I put Betaflight 3.0 on, I usually end up raising the yaw P gain some. Some other people have said the opposite, by the way. They've said, whoa, Betaflight's yaw P gain is way too high. I always lower it. So don't take this as gospel. I usually end up raising it. And I often bump the pitch and the roll P gain up, sometimes just a little bit, but sometimes more than a little bit, depending on the copter. However, I have never put Betaflight 3.0 on a single copter and flown it and gone, oh, whoa, oh, whew, hold my nose. Every single copter I've personally put Betaflight 3.0 on has flown decent, sometimes great, right out of the box. So do you need to tune it? I don't know. It depends on how good you want it to fly. But the answer might be no, you don't need to, but you can. So let's try and figure out what's going on with these oscillations. They're not very large in magnitude. So smoothing off again. We can see that the D term is roughly the same or less in magnitude than the P term. And by magnitude, I mean the height above the 0 line. So this line going through the center is 0. And we can see that the D term, if we were to draw another line at basically the top of the D term, we can see that it is usually less than or approximately equal to the P term. And if we take out that high frequency stuff, we can see the D term looks a lot more docile. So we're seeing gyro oscillations come through into the D term, but the D term is not flipping out with crazy magnitude, and that's telling us that our D gain is not excessive. And with the D gain of 9 and 14, I wouldn't expect it to be excessive. This is kind of the thing I'm talking about, though, with Betaflight, and here it is in Betaflight 291. It almost makes me wonder if it's something to do with the Blackbox viewer showing me something that I didn't used to see. I don't think I even still have the, no, I don't even have the other Blackbox viewer. It makes me wonder, because this is Betaflight 291, so it's not a 3.0 thing. The Blackbox viewer, the Betaflight Blackbox viewer, must be showing me data in a different way that's making it look more confusing, because I find this really hard to interpret, because there's so much high frequency noise, I kind of don't know what to make of it. I'll turn the filtering back down. Let's see if that's a good place to be. No major p-term oscillations. The p-term is very docile most of the time. Very low magnitude, close to the 0 line most of the time. Here we start to go high throttle. Notice we get some vibrations as you lower and then raise the throttle. That's like prop wash or something. No, that's normal. As the throttle is raised, we get more vibrations. You can barely even see the gyro. Yeah. No strong, obvious p-term oscillations. So here, okay, so here, look what happened. You cut the throttle. Now you're falling because you cut the throttle. And as you raise the throttle and turn, you're turning to the left now, you get this. This is the p-term becoming active, and you're probably getting a little bit of audible oscillation here. Notice that in this time when the p-term became active, the D-term did not flip out. The D-term is same magnitude roughly as it was before, right? So that's good. That says your D-term is not overtuned. You don't have excess D-gain. The P-term becomes active right here, and that is not problematic. That's the P-term working. You know, it's like the boss comes by and everybody's sitting around playing cards, and the boss is like, get to work. See here, the P-term, it's not doing anything, really. And that's, you know, you kind of want to see the P-term working some of the time. And here, during a challenging aerodynamic situation, it began to work, and that's good. It feels to me like this copter is, if anything, undertuned, because we're not seeing like a bunch of oscillations. The P and the D term are usually close to the axis, very docile. I would probably be working these gains up, but I'm not as confident about that as I might once have been, because I've seen copters that I thought were flying pretty well. They didn't feel soft. They didn't feel undertuned on Betaflight 3.0 specifically, but perhaps also on 2.9. And when I looked at the black box, I was like, I would call this undertuned if I were only looking at the black box, but because I'm flying it, I would say, yeah, it's okay. So it's possible that this is okay, but if I have to give you some advice of what to do, I would say I would try to work up the P gains, okay, and see where if you can find a point where the P gains are higher, where you still like the way the copter is flying, maybe better. And my general philosophy on P and D is that I'm going to work the P up until the copter feels sharp and until oscillations start to come out. And then I'm going to work the D up to get rid of those oscillations and bounce back at the end of flips and rolls. And I'm not able to do that on every copter because some copters have so much vibration that they just can't. The D term prevents it. The motors start getting hot, and you have to stop with the D term and then back the P gain back down again, and to get rid of the oscillations. But that's my general philosophy. And with a P gain of 4 and 5, and especially a yaw P gain of 8, I suspect you haven't worked the P gains up to find out where the sweet spot is for them, where the copter still feels sharp. So if you want to do something to try to improve your tune, work up the P gains and look at my practical PID tuning series, videos 1, 2, and 3 to see generally how I would go about that. Can Blackbox record the output voltages of the various ports? I don't think so. It can record VBAT, and of course it can record the motor signals and stuff, but the raw voltages, I don't know. Anthony, I don't like auto-tune algorithms. If you had a good experience with G-Tune, more power to you. G-Tune is totally hit or miss. Some people try it, they say it works great. Some people try it, it works terrible. Some people try it, it kind of does nothing. So I think I've said, does Betaflight have auto-tune? Yes. Install Betaflight 3.0. You're tuned. And that's almost true. So there you go. Is this an F3? Good question. I closed the window by accident. This is a... He doesn't say. Haha. Here's the CLI dump. We could see the target. This is SP Racing F3, so it's an F3. Yeah. All right, that's what I'm going to say. Check out my Practical PID Tuning Series playlist. Look at 1, 2, and 3 to see how I work up the P gain, and try that same process for yourself. Always be checking your motor temperatures as you work up D to make sure they're not getting too hot. No gin tonight, Mr. Pink. Just lemonade. Just lemonade. FPV Freak, please don't beg for subs in my channel. No offense. Just that's not what we're here for. If everybody who had a channel begged for subs, then it wouldn't be a good vibe. All right, here we go. Anthony, was that your? Are you gdelpu? Let's take a look at the next one. And actually, if you guys will hold on for 1 second. All right, we're going to go to the next one, number 2147. This is Martin555. Martin555 submits a lot. He's a passionate fan of mine. He says, I just did a Blackbox log, Dodo board, latest clean flight, one shot enabled, all defaults, all calibrated. Racer Star ESCs. Racer Star are apparently a very, very good budget ESC. They're about $10 a piece on Banggood. I'm told that they're made in the same factory as the Cicada ESCs, which are, I've flown them and had good results with them. They've performed fine. Frankly, just about all BL Heli ESCs. There doesn't seem to be any bad ones as near as I can tell. They all seem to be pretty decent, and some of them are great. Many of them are great. So the Racer Stars for $10 are probably the cheapest way you're going to get into a BL Heli ESC, and probably a pretty good bargain if you're trying to outfit your quad on the cheap. After arming via switch, turn on angle and barrel modes, then aggressive backflip. Okay, so we can look at your Blackbox log, but if it only happens in angle and barrel mode and you're running Betaflight, Betaflight has what Boris calls best effort support for angle and barrel mode. For barrel and mag for sure, maybe angle. So if there's some weird bug in those modes that causes it to backflip, then Betaflight is not for you. Betaflight explicitly is about acro flying first and foremost. So you could have an issue. I've heard of people having issues in angle mode or horizon mode where after a bunch of flips in a row, the copter loses its level and just wants to turn to the left. I've heard of all these problems, and I don't have a good answer for it. I don't fly in auto level mode. I'm not. If I were aware of a bug, I'd tell you, but I'm not. But that's just not the focus. Let's take a look and see what we can figure out, if anything. Is he in clean flight, not Betaflight? Oh, did he say that? Did I miss that? He did say clean flight. How about that? Thank you, guys. I can't point you, Funny Bunny, to a vid on interpreting Betaflight logs from Blackbox. It's such an open-ended process that I can't really point you to one vid that tells you what to do. It's why I do these videos, and I just keep doing them because there's always more to learn. So all I can tell you is just, try watching the videos and try and pick things up as you can. I've started putting together in my mind an outline for a black intro to Blackbox course to try and boil it down as much as I can and help people get started. But maybe someday that'll happen, but who knows? Don't hold your breath. Well, that doesn't seem right. Oh, I see. Haha. Here's a 19-second log. It's probably that one. So I immediately see that the D term is larger in magnitude than the P term. And that is always suspicious to me. But maybe when you throttle up, that won't happen. It's often the case that at low throttle, the D term is sort of hyperactive. And then as you raise the throttle and the props spin up, then it becomes less hyperactive. No, but you can see as you begin to raise the throttle, the D term becomes super active. So immediately, I feel like your D gain is too high. You see that the D term is twice as big as the P term. The P term is the red line, the D term is the yellow line. Twice as big. And that's never what you want to see. So immediately, I feel like your D gain is too high. And that definitely could cause the flip out potentially. You know, you could get kind of a resonance in your PID loop because of the high D gains that causes the copter to flip out. So where's the flip out? We should see a motor pickup. Yeah, see? Look at the motors. Look what the motors are doing. Look up here in the upper left at the motors as I roll forward. You see here, the motors are, I should play it at a constant speed. That's the only way to really do it right. Watch what the motors do as the copter flips out. Yep, and they start growing and growing and growing, and then it flips out and it's done. And you can see here, these left two motors are close to full. The right two motors are down at 0. I don't know why this problem is happening, but I see that the D gain is going bonkers, and I think you need to reduce your D gain. A copter will never fly well with the D term going like this. It's just sort of, you know, flipping out and making everything else a mess. So I don't know if that'll fix your problem, but I know that it'll fix some problem. Something. This isn't a well-tuned copter with a D gain flipping out like this. Now, if you come back to me, Martin, and you say, but my D gains are already at 4 or 5, then it's hard for me to understand why the D term is doing this. What if we look at your level PIDs, which I don't get a chance to do that very often. Let's see what we see if we look at your level PIDs. I don't even know where they are. Is it not logged? I don't know what they are. Where's the level PIDs? There's the accelerometer. Does it not log it? That's weird. I don't see it in here. Maybe it's not logged. That doesn't seem right. Well, I don't know. If you guys have any insight, go right ahead. But, oh well. Yeah, I want to look at your level PIDs because I think there's some chance that there's an interaction going on here between the level PID loop and the acro PID loop. So think about the acro PID loop controlling the angular rate of the copter and the acro PID loop controlling the angle of the copter, right? And if the acro PID loop inputs into, the angle PID loop inputs into the acro PID loop. So those two can get a sort of a ping pong effect where the copter flips out and doesn't work right. But if this were an acro mode flight, for sure, I would say definitely your D gain is too high. Dean ADH, flip on first takeoff. You need this. Oh man. My keywords are no good. There we go. You need this. Quadcopter flips on takeoff solved. That's the video. Does your copter do this? Ready? Does your copter, is that it? Go watch this video. Robert, clean flight PIDs are 40 instead of 4.0 because Boris hates decimal points. A decimal point killed his mother. He's had it out for decimal points ever since. They're just multiplied by 10, so you no longer have to go. You're ever putting your I gain in and you go 0.050? No, wait, is it 050 or 005? Oh crap, right? Now it's just 50, right? So that's it. Okay, Martin, I hope that's helpful. Reduce your D gain is the only thing I can suggest. That's the most obvious thing wrong with your black box log. Let's go to the next one. TheOcean asks, I feel like I'm 80 to 85% there on my tune, just not sure what to change next. Still have a little prop wash oscillation. Tried playing around with P&D, didn't seem to do much good. So here's what I would say is, what people often say, I've tried changing my PIDs, it doesn't seem to do anything. I feel like you really need to change them in a methodical way. And if you are doing it that way, like for example, David R., who I made that video with, said, I tried changing my PIDs, it didn't do much good. And his problem was that his camera was loose. So yes, in fact, changing his PIDs didn't make much difference. But I think a lot of times when people are changing their PIDs, they're not doing it in a methodical way. And they raise a P and they drop D and they, and they can't tell what's going on because they're just kind of flailing around. That was a joke, sir. That was a joke. A decimal point killed his mother. That was just a joke. Boris hates decimal points like Batman because the decimal point killed his mother. It was just a joke. Don't. I'm not sure the joke didn't go through. So if you're going to play with P, I, and D, do it in a methodical way. And I would like to point you to Practical PID Tuning video 5. And I do a sort of a methodical, my goal in that video, this one, Practical PID Tuning Part 5. My goal in this video is to do kind of a methodical show you what the different PIDs do, but also just, you can see sort of a methodical way of looking at what the PIDs do. Low P, low I, high I. Feel it out and pay attention to how the tune changes as you raise P and lower it, raise I, raise D, and so on. So definitely, if you don't just play around, and TheOcean, maybe you didn't just play around, maybe you just were speaking casually, but do it in a methodical way. Let's see how to fix prop wash oscillation. Okay, so to fix prop wash oscillation, I feel like Betaflight 2.7 was the first Betaflight where I felt like it became possible for me to almost entirely fix prop wash oscillation in a relatively consistent way. Before Betaflight 2.7, it was a real, you were feeling around in the dark and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. The way it's supposed to work is you raise the D gain until the prop wash oscillation goes away. And that didn't consistently work really in any sort of way. But from Betaflight 2.7 forward, and especially in 2.9 and 3.0, especially 3.0 with the notch filter, I have always been able to reduce prop wash oscillation by raising D gain. And that is something I could not say before. If you watch my video, how to get rid of prop wash oscillation or something like that, I talk about how there's just no single approach that will fix it. But now I feel like there is, if you can raise the D gains high enough without your motors getting hot, okay? So when you raise the D gains, the more vibration your copter has, the hotter your motors will get. And eventually you'll reach a point where your motors are getting too hot and you can't raise the D gain anymore or you're going to smoke a motor, at which point you have to stop. At that point, though, you have the option to try to clean up the vibration. You can soft mount your copter. You can do gyro filtering if you like. You can do notch filtering on the gyro if you like. Or you could go get some new motors if you got some beat up old motors, or change your props. So there is a path forward to fixing prop wash oscillation today. It used to also be the case that I would ask you, what ESCs are you running? And if you didn't have good ESCs, you're not going to fix prop wash oscillation. Hold on. But today, all the ESCs we're running, they're pretty good, and they can handle prop wash oscillation pretty confidently. So what I would say is if you're trying to fix prop wash oscillation, make sure P is not too high, because high P will bring out prop wash oscillation, and then you'll need more D to fix it. They have to be in balance. So the more P you've got, the more D you need to hold back the prop wash oscillation. And eventually you hit the point where D can't go any higher because your motors are hot and you got to bring it back down again. So you want P as high as it needs to be to make the copter feel sharp and handle well, but no higher. And then bring D up to where it needs to be to tame the prop wash oscillation while paying attention to see if your motors are too hot. Now, let's take a look at the Blackbox log. And he says the first flight is the one I want. Okay. Let's take a look at your noise level first, as always, because we saw how the noise level, I talked about how the noise level affects your ability to raise the D gain, and therefore your ability to filter. I mean, to kill prop wash. So if I turn the smoothing off, with the smoothing off, the lines are very, very thin. This is actually this is with smoothing off. Here it is with on. There's almost no difference. So this is a very, very noise-free copter. Betaflight 271. Oh, see, that was the one I said. That was the first one that you could really do it. Your filtering is at the default value of 100 hertz, 110 hertz for D term. So this is an incredibly noise-free copter, frankly. Incredibly. That the lines are this thin with default filtering, very noise-free. I'm very impressed. So you have lots of room to raise your D gain without your motors getting hot. Okay, so your D gain is at 22, and that's the answer to your question. To fix prop wash oscillation, leave your P gain where it is and start raising D gain. Raise it by no more than 10 for sure, maybe 5. Maybe raise it to, let's say you raise it to 35. You go hover for 30 seconds, pop the throttle a couple times, land, check your motors, see if they're too hot. If they are, back it back down, but I don't think they will be. So work it up from, say, 35 in increments of 5, and each time you do it methodically. So go put your D gain on pitch and roll to 35. Go out there and do some fast pylon-style turns. Go zoom one direction, zoom, whip around, jam the throttle, right? And try and get the prop wash to come out. And then see if it's better or worse as you raise the D gain a little bit at a time. Another move I like to do for prop wash oscillation is not, if you do that hard 180 turn with a throttle jam, you'll oscillate. You'll almost always oscillate. But you seldom do that in real flight. At least I don't. So you can also do a little bit more gradual, sort of a J turn, if you will, but kind of a sharp one, but not an absolute 180 pylon turn with the throttle jammed. And again, work the throttle in the middle of the turn. So kind of drop the throttle, turn sharply, and raise the throttle, and that'll bring the prop wash out. And then while you do that, raise the D gain, work the D gain up, 35, 40, 45, maybe even 50. Each time, be careful you don't smoke your motors. If you smoke your motors doing this, I told you so, and I'm not buying you new motors, okay? So test it out first. Fly for 30 seconds, land, see if your motors are hot, then go do some more flying, and pay attention to whether the prop wash gets better or worse. The prop wash should get better as you raise the D gain. And also, think about going to Betaflight 3.0. It's very, very good. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Nope, that's one I already did. 2178. I see that there's some good discussion and questions going on in the chat. I appreciate you guys in chat who are helping out the guy who's having trouble with his copter flipping. I do encourage you to go watch that video I showed you where I talked through the whole logic. But I do appreciate you guys helping him out in chat when I'm trying to focus on the Blackbox logs and not get too distracted. You can see I have a freaking ton of them. And I really want, I mean, these people are sitting there waiting to hear from me, so I kind of feel like I owe them. Lux Float versus MultiWii, Robbie. It's gone. There is no more in Betaflight. I fly Betaflight, so of course that's what I'm thinking of. If you're still on CleanFlight, then if you have an F1 board, use Rewrite. If you have an F3 board, use Lux Float. Okay, that's the difference. Is floating point, and Lux Float uses floating point. If you're on an F1 board, use Rewrite because it uses integers. And as Paul Arscart says, you can just go to Betaflight 3.0 and save yourself a lot of trouble. People think Betaflight is like only for high-end acro pilots, but Betaflight has all these extra features that confuse you, maybe, but just ignore them, pretend they don't exist. I don't see them. You know, Betaflight is in many ways a superset of CleanFlight. So if you can handle CleanFlight, you can handle Betaflight. Betaflight is in many ways just CleanFlight plus. You go, okay, well, where's LuxFloat? Where's Rewrite? Well, it isn't there anymore, but there's still P's and I's and D's, just like before. But the thing is, try this. Save your config, go into the command line, dump your config and save it to a text file. Flash Betaflight, configure it, obviously. You need to set up your map, you know, all your basic config, and go fly it for a couple batteries and see if you don't love it. And if you don't love it, go back to CleanFlight. But there's a chance for a lot of people that if you take a half hour to go install Betaflight on your copter and reconfigure it from scratch, which I know is a pain, although I've gotten pretty good at it these days, having done it a lot. Once you go fly it, you may go, holy shit, this is really good, and not worry about it going forward. But maybe you'll hate it. You'll go back to CleanFlight. You know, at least you give it a try. Okay. Yeah, that's the main difference between LuxFloat and Rewrite. Rewrite uses integer math. LuxFloat uses floating point math. There used to be more differences, but Boris mushed them all together until they were basically gone. And I'm pretty sure that's true in CleanFlight 1.13 as well as Betaflight. It's not just a Betaflight thing. CleanFlight also has many of the changes that Boris made to Rewrite and LuxFloat. So there's essentially no difference between them anymore. They should fly basically the same. In fact, some of you CleanFlight guys can tell me, do you remember when Boris rescaled the LuxFloat PIDs so that they were the same as the Rewrite PIDs? So Rewrite used to be, you know, the PIDs might be 3 to 6 on P-gain, and LuxFloat, the PIDs might be like 1 to 2 to 3 maybe, but then Boris rescaled them. Has that gone into CleanFlight? Somebody in the comments will say. I think it has. I think Rewrite and LuxFloat are basically the difference is just one uses integer and one uses floating point math. Alrighty, let's do a ChiefGrief. Joshua Bardwell has been trying to help me, but I can't dump my Blackbox log here until I get my PC. Okay. Quad acts like I lose a motor. When hard turn, it will almost jitter and fall. Now the motors are not really hot. They're warm, but I can grab them. Okay. If you can hold your motors without going, ow, ow, and burning your hand a little bit, not literally, then they're probably okay. If you have big, thick, calloused hands because you're a blacksmith and you can hold a burning coal in your fingers, this does not apply to you. For a normal person, if you can pinch the motor and it doesn't become painfully hot within, say, 3 to 5 seconds, and you go, ooh, get out of there, then your motors are probably fine. Warm is okay. Painfully hot is not. Let's see. So in BL Heli, you're actually supposed to set the power to 0.125, not 1.25. And that is specifically a BL Heli S setting. It's the startup power setting. Some BL Heli S setups have issues with desyncs, and changing BL Heli S startup power to 0.125, not 1.25, fixes it for some people. I believe that BL Heli 16.3 has fixed this, and it shouldn't be necessary anymore. I'm not even really sure what the issue was, but if you set it to 1.25, you didn't fix the issue. And if you don't have BL Heli S ESCs, oh, but you do, okay. So yeah, if you set it to 1.25, you didn't do the right thing. Go back and try again with 0.125. if motor 4 is maxing out, if you see a motor maxing out in Blackbox, it means that the motor has stopped making thrust, usually. There's two reasons a motor can max out. So let's think about this from the perspective of a car, right? If you see that the accelerator maxes out, let's imagine that you're on the highway and you're trying to go 100 miles an hour, and so you floor it, right? And that's one reason why the accelerator might max out. Let's say that you're on the highway and there's a big semi-truck right behind you, and then he wants to get through, and he's right on your tail, and your car is losing power for some reason. So you push the accelerator to get away from the semi, and the car doesn't speed up. You're pushing the accelerator harder, right? Right? So there's two reasons you'll see a motor max out. One is because the motor is being commanded to max out its thrust, and it is going to full throttle. And the other is because the motor is not making any thrust, and the PID loop is like, give me more, Scotty, I need more power. And the motor's like, I'm giving it all she's got, Captain. Right? And you can tell which of those is the case. If the copter, let's say that the right motor is going to full. Well, if the copter is rolling this way, then the motor is actually going to full. And if the copter is rolling that way, the motor is not going to full, because if the motor was going to full, the copter would be rolling that way. So if you see a motor go to full, you look at which way the copter is rolling, and if it's rolling in the direction of the motor is outputting thrust. And if it's rolling the opposite direction of the motor is not outputting thrust, and that's why the motor's gone to full. Okay. BL Heli being not in sync with master doesn't mean anything. Usually, it can. For example, if your ESCs have been calibrated and have slightly different endpoints, they'll read as not in sync with master, but that's okay. That's the intended result of the calibration. Not a big deal. With the min throttle being 6 points higher than the rest, that's not that big a deal. It just means they calibrated slightly different endpoints. That's not that far off. So then, why is the motor desyncing? If you have BL Heli S and you're experiencing desyncs, I would say go ahead and set your startup power to 0.125 or flash to BL Heli 16.3 and see if that fixes it. That's kind of the first thing I would do. If it's doing it right after a flip or a roll, so you do a flip and as you're stopping the flip, whoosh, you lose a motor. That's probably min throttle is too low. That's what I would say about that. Okay. Dean is the one with the question about the copter that flips on takeoff. Dean, listen to me closely. I'm talking to you, Dean. There are 3 or 4 things 99% of the time that cause this issue. Occasionally you'll get an oddball thing, and it's not one of these things. The things are that your board align is not correct. So you rotated the board 90 degrees or 180 degrees, and you didn't update the board align setting. Board align, not borderline. Okay, that's one of them. You can have a motor spinning the wrong direction. You can have a prop on backwards. You have the wrong prop on. One of those two. Or your motor mix could be wrong. I think those are them. Go watch the video. Here's the thing. Here's the reason I'm talking to you now. I've given this advice to many people over the year, really more than about a year. And every time they say, no, it's not one of those. I checked, I'm sure. And most of the time they come back and say, oh, you know what? I had a motor spinning the wrong way. I don't know. I missed it. So no matter how sure you are that it's not one of those 4 things, it's almost always one of those 4 things. And for some reason, people just brain fart it. And they like just brain fart. I had one copter I built where I swapped motors 1 and 2. And I double checked it and I triple checked it. And every freaking time I checked it, I went 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's right. And the freaking diagram was right there on the screen going 1, 2, 3, 4 or whatever. And every time I just brain farted it. I don't know why. So go watch the video. It'll list the things that it probably is. The one that I missed in the video is that you got the props on wrong. I don't know why I overlooked that, but I got called out in the comments. And if you check, really check, it's probably one of those things. If it's not one of those things, then maybe it's something else, like a bad gyro or RC, bad receiver. But almost all the time, it's one of those things. Okay, there you go. Let's see. All right, here we go. Oh, we did this one. Great. This was 2178. We're going to go to 2184. Took the quad for a quick spin to see if RC command interpolation and the new notch filter defaults helped a very bumpy ride. Was a bit more bearable with 543 than 553, but still horrible. Is this PID related? Oh, good. This is a good one. We can approach this one. Let's see what we can do. Alrighty. Somebody in the comments said, tell everybody who submits that they need to be on Betaflight 3.0. Why would you want to learn about old ones? I see your point, but PID tuning is PID tuning in some respects. And just because somebody's not, there was somebody who had a question, he was on 216, and I was like, I'm not sure I can help you very much. I don't even remember 216. But if you're on 291 or maybe even 271, or gosh, if you're on Clean Flight, I'm willing to take a look. I don't want to be a snob about it. So we got bumpy ride. Is this PID related or is there something else I'm missing? Let's try and focus on that question. And we're going to start with the gyros. Always start with the gyros. And I'll turn the smoothing off by pressing the S key. You've got a lot of do you see these square boxes here? There's a lot of breakups in your log. You want to pick a lower logging rate. Can I see? Yes, sample rate 1/8. Well, gosh, at a sample rate of 1/8, and you have a 4 kilohertz loop time, so you're at 500 milliseconds. No, 500 hertz, yeah, 500 hertz. I'm surprised you're getting these dropouts. That's very odd. I don't know why that would be. That's pretty odd that you're getting little dropouts all the time at such a low sampling rate. I wonder if I can see what device you're logging to. I don't think I can. Nope, I can't. It makes me wonder if you're logging to an open log. What's your flight controller? Revo. Well, Revo has an onboard SD card reader. I have no idea why these dropouts are here. That's pretty weird. Okay, so let's look at your gyro then. Your gyro is pretty clean. So it's not like excess vibration. And then the next thing I want to see is, it'd be nice to see a video. If you've got bumpiness, it's good to see a video to show the character of the bumpiness. If you watch my video troubleshooting David R's copter, he had vibration problems, and the way that the vibration looks is really indicative of, it's just clear that it's not P-term oscillation. So that can almost be more helpful than a log, I'm afraid to say. I don't see anything in here that would indicate that you have a tuning problem. So if you're having bumpiness, I would look at the camera. That's where I would go. Your P gains are quite low. They're not low, but they're not obviously excessive. And I don't see anything in here that looks like P-term oscillation. D-term magnitude is less than P in most cases. The D-term is not overactive. So there's no indications in here that you have an overtuned copter. The D gain is too high, for example. Here we start to see some P-term oscillation. But overall, I think the P-term here, I would describe it as active but not overactive. I wouldn't call this P-term oscillation. I would just call it, it's working. It's working. This does not look to me like something that would show up in your camera. Like you can see it going up and down, but it doesn't, we don't see those hard sinusoidal oscillations. Maybe it's a little, maybe, but since it's happening all the time, more or less, see, look here, it's just happening. The P term is just doing that thing. I think you would notice. Oh, what happened? Hold on. Hold on. I am streaming. Oh, the stream is good. Sorry. Had a little glitch in the stream there for a minute. Yeah, I think you would notice if you're having constant oscillations, and you would have told me. So, P-term oscillations, you would not call them bumpy. P-term oscillations are going to be very regular, very right? They're not going to be like that's not a P-term oscillation, if I can sort of audibly interpret. I mean, Joshua does impressions of quadcopter tuning issues. You ever notice how white eye terms are like this, and black eye terms are all like... No, I hope you all know the reference I'm making. Otherwise, some of you might be offended. Okay, so P-term oscillations are going to be like ah, and D-term oscillations might be like right? And you wouldn't call a P-term oscillation like sort of bumpy. And so we don't have overtuned P-term. We definitely, the D-term is not overtuned because the magnitude is so low. Let's look at the pitch axis. Same on the pitch axis. So this copter looks like it's tuned pretty good to me, actually. The P term is active, but not overactive. The D term is present, but not dominating. Overall, I feel like this looks pretty good. And if you're having bumpy problems, I would look at your camera. That's where I would go next. Your gyros are clean, so it's not your props or your motors. I would go to your camera and see if your camera is loose. Okay. I'm going to take one second because this question is coming up in the comments, and I'm interested in it enough to to break away from the black box log analysis. Does RC rate or S rate or rates affect PIDs? The answer to that is, well, it depends. Pardon me. In the multi-Wii flight controller, way back when, RC rate was a linear scaling of the stick deflection to create a targeted angular rate. And pitch and roll rate related to PID relaxation at full stick deflection to increase the angular rate. What it was is that the P term would try very hard to keep a specific angular rate at full stick deflection. And they were like, listen, just let it go. Just let it go. We're just trying to spin really fast. Who cares how many degrees per second it is exactly? But in modern flight controllers, in Rewrite, in LuxFloat, in the Betaflight PID controller, in all of those, that's not the way it works anymore. Okay, so when Betaflight went to Super Expo rates, those functionalities got separated, right? So, hang on. Here in Betaflight configurator, now we have, see this? Super rates PID relaxation. Oh, well, I guess I see. I see what you're saying. So the super rates PID relaxation function means that at full stick deflection, the P term and the D term, is it the P and the D? No, it's I and D. Reduces I and D. Interesting. So as you lower this slider, you get more I term and D term relaxation as the sticks deflects fully over. And that relates to your S rates or super expo rates. If you're not using super expo rates and you're only using RC rate and expo, then this doesn't apply. You see? If you're using super expo rates, then the more you pull this slider down, the more the I and the D gain will be relaxed as you deflect the stick, which allows the copter to spin sort of smoother at full stick deflection. You ever go into a move and you're doing a snap roll or a 360 roll, and in the middle of the roll, you hear the motors go as the copter tries to speed up and slow down in the middle of this, 1200 degrees per second roll. Turning this down gets rid of that and just says, just let it spin. Just let it spin. All right. If you want to experience it yourself, try it. So there is a relationship between the rates and the PIDs. I was about to say no, there isn't, because for a while there wasn't, but I see that now there is with the new feature. Okay. But no, Kyle, I disagree with you. Your rates should not affect your PIDs, really. A little bit they do. If you are Mr. Steel or Final Glide, you ever see those guys do the move where they do 360 roll, 360 flip, 360 roll, doop, 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 right? If you're doing that kind of move, then you need an absolutely crisp stop at the end of those moves, right? And you're going to need to raise your P gain and your D gain to get those absolutely crisp stops, right? Whereas if you're just flying around very smoothly like Schizo may have lower rates than like Mr. Steel. I don't know, right? That style of flying may result in lower rates, though. But he has lower PIDs, and because he flies smoother, not because he has lower rates. So in general, I think you should think about the rates and the PIDs as independent. Set the rates based on how fast you want the copter to spin, and set the PIDs based on how sharp you want the copter to feel. Here's an analogy I'll make. Did you know that in an F1 car, racing car, the wheel turns 90 degrees this way and 90 degrees that way? That's it. It doesn't go because when you're racing the car, right, they have no room in the cockpit. They turn that way, they turn that way, and that's the full lock-to-lock deflection of the wheel. That's rates. In my car, I go all the way around to get lock-to-lock. I have lower rates. But PIDs is like the car's suspension, okay? A car can have low rates, right? A soft steering wheel, but the suspension theoretically could be really tight and sharp, okay? So PIDs are like the car's suspension, and rates are like the steering wheel having a lot of turns or few turns. And I think you should think of them as separate and then feel the ways that they interact. But don't start out thinking of them like, if I raise my rates, do I need to raise my P gain? Not really. Not unless you really extremely change the rates will you start wanting to change your gains. Okay. So there you go, HAL 9 Kilo. Check your camera. That's what I would say. And that was 2184. Let's do 2185. We are 1 hour in, and we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's good. I'm on track to do 10. That's great. Jeremy, saying that P-term relaxation is like a TPA for rates, I see what you're getting at. That's not a bad way of thinking of it. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Jay.ing asks, would be grateful if you can have a look at my video. Here's the info. Trying to get rid of my prop wash. So I'm not going to actually, well, we've got video here, so I may as well look at it. But I kind of already talked about prop wash and said what I feel like I have to say, and I'm going to say the same thing to you. So I would say the same thing to you that I said to whoever it was previously in the live stream. Sorry, I don't remember who it is, about prop wash. Basically, work your P gains up as high as they need to be, but not too high, Because if you turn your P gains too high, you'll never get rid of the prop wash. And then raise D gains until you reach a point where either the prop wash is mostly gone or your motors are starting to get super hot and you just have to stop. If your motors get hot before the prop wash is gone, then you have two choices. You can filter more or you can lower the P gain. If you filter more, though, eventually it'll make the prop wash worse, not better, because it'll delay the PID loop. But you could filter a little more to cool down the motors and then raise the D gain a little more. It's kind of a balancing act. More P requires more D, but then the motors get hot, so you have to lower P or add more filtering. But if you add more filtering, the P and the D get less effective, so sometimes that makes things worse, not better. And it's kind of like spinning 3 plates, and eventually you figure out where the sweet spot is, hopefully. And eventually you give up. You say, look, this is as good as it's going to get. I cannot get the prop wash any more eliminated on this copter. I found that 4-inch copters do way better with prop wash than 5-inch. In my relatively limited experience, it's not like I've tuned 100 copters, but I think the 4-inch ones do better because the props are smaller, they're spinning faster, and they respond faster. I found that the prop wash oscillation on 4-inch copters, it will be kind of fast, but sort of like, instead of somebody going, hey, 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 if they just go, and it kind of just becomes a vibration, right? And you don't see it anymore. And that's what the 4-inch copters do. The prop wash oscillation is still there, but it's so sort of high frequency and small in magnitude, it's kind of ignorable. Whereas the 5-inch ones, it's lower frequency and higher magnitude. So there may just be a limit at which you can't make the prop wash any better. That's all I'm going to say about that. Weird yaw twitch during loops at 11.445. All right, well, we'll take a, well, I'm afraid we're off the hook on this one. Your URL is broken. Sorry, Jay. That's all I got to say. Resubmit, Jay. Fix your link and please resubmit. I'll put you back in the queue. Remind me that this happened and I'll move you to the top of the queue, okay? But your link is broken. Bummer. Deddy, I think air mode is better. Idle up forces the set point to never go below a certain level, but it doesn't increase the authority that the PID loop has or the mixer has. Air mode increases the authority, and that's more desirable. If you want to know more about it, watch my video, air mode. What is air mode? Air mode explained. I don't remember the name of it, where I talk about that. Will Blackbox tell you if air mode is on? I don't know about that. I don't see a mode change, like a red line that says air mode on. If you have air mode on a mode, then yes, Blackbox will tell you when it goes on and off, I would think. It tells you all the other mode changes. Why not that one? Otherwise, you can look right here. You see right here? This is telling you if air mode is active as a feature, and you can see that it's not. So there you go. So I would conclude for this one. But if air mode is on by default and it's on before you start logging, then would you see it turned on? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure. You could tell whether it was on or off. Okay. All right, Jay. Yeah, resubmit yours, please, Jay, and remind me about this, and I'll put you at the top of the queue. Your link is broken. Sorry. 2192. We have Blackbox data. DaveedFPV is asking about behavior using a 4S LiPo. On 3S, everything is okay. On 4S, the quad loses stabilization after a roll. And one of the things we talked about, I think, in the previous live stream where we discussed this is when you go from 4S to 3S, you need to raise min throttle because the ESC has less authority on the motor. So you need a higher throttle value on 3S to keep the motor spinning than on 4S. But you've gone from 3S to 4S, so that's the exact opposite. You should have more authority and less problem there. So I don't think min throttle is your problem. If you're not having drops at 3S and you are having them at 4S, min throttle is not your issue. So normal forward takeoff, gained like 4 meters. There's your problem. You shouldn't fly in meters. Don't fly in meters, you guys. Fly in feet. If you fly in meters, you get a lot of problems. Fly in feet, okay? You'll be fine. You did a roll, then the problem shows up. Okay, let's take a look. Two 5-8-3-2. Is that the right one? Yes. I just make sure I'm looking at the right log because that's not really. I've made that mistake before. Is the NAS 32 good, RC Discovery? It's fine, but nowadays it's out of date. If you're going to run Betaflight 3.0, you really need to be on an F3 board at least, or soon to be an F4 board, I think. So let's look for that roll. Here's your roll, full stick deflection. The roll is happening. And what I want to look at now is the motors. And see what we see. So as you go into the roll, yes. So we can look, you guys, look what happens. As we go into the roll, the right-hand motors spin up, the left-hand motors spin down. We can see that in the motor traces and in this diagram here. And that's because you're rolling to the left, and that's exactly what should be happening. But then as the motors reach maximum, notice that the front right motor stays at maximum, but the back right motor spins down again. Why is that happening? The reason that's happening is because the copter is losing stability along the pitch axis because the front right motor has stopped making thrust. So here the motors spin up, the copter rolls to the right, the front right motor stops making thrust, which means now the front right of the copter, let me get a freaking copter. Oh, hey, look, I have a copter. It's just like in Top Gun, you know, they have those little airplanes with the sticks on them. I need one of those. So here's the copter, right? We're rolling to the right. The front right motor stops making thrust. When that happens, what happens? The back right motor is making thrust. The front right motor is not. These two motors are spun down. What happens is the copter starts to pitch forward, doesn't it? Okay? Because the back right motor is making thrust, but the front right isn't. As the copter pitches forward, the PID loop says, no, 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 don't do that. You're only supposed to be rolling. You're not supposed to be pitching. And as a result, it spins down the back right motor to cease the unwanted behavior. Okay? So that's why the back right motor spins down. Why does the front right motor stay spun up? Because the front right motor has stopped making thrust. Right? And so the PID loop is saying, front right motor, get going, get going, go. And the front right motor is not doing it. So the issue is that your front right motor is having a problem. That's the issue. We can tell that by looking at the motor traces and interpreting what we're seeing there. So now, what's the cause? And I don't know. But here's some things I can tell you. It happens at high throttle. If it happens at low throttle, if it happens at the end of the flip, the motors stop and then go. And just as they start to go, whoop, one of them flips out and goes to max. That's min throttle too low, or maybe startup power is not right. Because startup power affects what happens when the motor is spinning very slowly and suddenly shoots up. But this is happening at high throttle. And high throttle problems usually mean that the ESC is having trouble maintaining sync with the motor. It's hardest to maintain sync when the motor is spinning quickly, and especially when the motor spins very rapidly up from low to high. So I would start looking at the motor or the ESC. There's something wrong in there. An inability to maintain sync at high throttle or when spinning up rapidly. If it's always the front right motor, then you could just replace the motor. Don't throw the other one out because it could be the ESC, but I would start by replacing the motor or maybe the ESC. I think it's probably not the flight controller. I don't know why I think that. I can't articulate it, but I feel like it's probably not. I would start by, and if you can't replace the motor, swap the motor. Swap the front right and the back right motor with each other. and then go fly. And if suddenly the back right motor starts dropping out, you know it's the motor. Okay? There we go. Yeah, Dean ADH. I'm telling you, go watch that video, Dean. Wait, motor spinning fast. That's flip, first takeoff. If I don't disarm, the quad will fly away. Dean, if it flips out, I mean, pardon me if I'm misunderstanding you, but if it flips out, like I showed you in that video, just as you throttle up, the motor's idle, and as you raise the throttle, suddenly it goes, right? Go watch the video I showed you, and that has the answer in it. No, I really, your motor is, you go be 400% sure, not 100%, not 200%. And Dean, I apologize. I hope I'm not giving you a hard time, but you know, well, we're talking on a live stream. You brought it up. So many people have said to me, no, really, my motors are spinning the right way. And I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yep. And I'm like, well, I don't know what it is. And then they come back to me and they're like, I had a motor spinning the wrong way. This is something that we all get wrong. So check your. I'm not going to tell you how to troubleshoot it because I made the video. You just go watch the video. If you do everything that's in the video and it's still doing it, then we can dig in and try and figure out what's going on. But no matter how much people protest, I still insist that you go double check, triple check, because oftentimes you've just missed something by accident, and it's one of those things. Your motor mix is wrong. Your borderline is wrong. One of those things. So yeah. And here's the video. Quadcopter flips on takeoff. That's the video you should watch. Check it out. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, Daveed. There's your suggestion, Daveed. I don't know what it is, but it's your front right motor. If you have, the money to do it, just replace the motor and see if that fixes it. If you really want to, replace the ESC too. But I would start with the motor, then the ESC. And then if that doesn't do it, then you're just sort of working your way inward. Is it the motor header and the flight controller? That's kind of weird. But it's probably the motor or the ESC. Okay. If you wonder what I'm doing in between these entries, normally after one of these, I have to go back and I really watch like the whole thing again. I don't watch it. I click through it pretty quickly. But I have to find the breaks where I went from one person to another so I can put timestamps in the video description. And I had the brilliant frickin' idea, why don't I do that while I'm actually recording? So in between each one, I'm noting the timestamps so I can not have to watch this whole thing again. Maybe. 2192. Now we're on 2196. SadLeprechaun humbly presents his first video log. Tuned pretty well. Close to 85%. 85% is pretty good. PID, TPA, notch filter. Can anything see anything out of whack in the video? Quad feels pretty amazing. If you submit videos to me, don't put the overlay on them. It just gets in the way. Give me videos without the overlay. And I'm going to listen. I'm going to put the earphones on so I can listen. If there's any music, I'm going to stop the video quickly because I don't want to get a copyright strike or anything. Oh, here it's muted. Let me make sure that it's turned down also. There we go. You guys, is the volume okay? I hope it's not too loud. I think it's not. I screw that up sometimes. Yeah, it's okay. All right, here we go. So when he went to full throttle, the motor sounded smooth. I didn't hear any signs of either P or D term oscillation there. Motor sounds smooth. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this flip that he does, and we're going to see if the stop to the flip is crisp or if there's any bounce back or rebound at the end of the flip. Here we go. A little hard to tell because the video is a little blurry and we got the black box in the way, but it seemed like a reasonably crisp stop. I want you guys to listen to the motors while he's falling right here. The throttle is relatively low and he's falling and the motors are kind of at idle. Listen here. Not here, right here. If your D gain is too high, right there, that point just before I stopped, the motors will often sound like they're kind of going, even though they're at idle, they're kind of jittering and shuddering. And that's a sign of excess D-gain. I want you to listen again. This is not happening, but I want you to pay attention to the point where it would happen if the D-gain was too high. Right there. That sort of quiet period where the copter is falling at mid or low throttle. Nothing is happening. You're not turning or anything. You're just falling. And that's a point where if your D-gain is too high, the copter will kind of be jittering and shuddering. That's actually not necessarily too high, but it's right on the edge of too high. And if you go a little further or things get a little worse, it will be too high. Good yaw spin there. Crisp stop at the end of the yaw spin. No destabilization on yaw. It didn't roll or pitch or anything. At the end of the yaw move, it came smoothly to a stop. It didn't go zzzz and roll out of it or anything. That's good. Good stop on that roll. I hear a tiny bit of prop wash oscillation as he fell there, but you couldn't see it and you could barely hear it. Listen. Right there. Listen again. Right there. That little warble there was prop wash oscillation, but boy, it's really subtle, isn't it? You could see it in the black box too. Little bit there. No. I mean, we could keep watching. You're good. You're good. I'd say that's way more than 85% for what it's worth, SadLeprechaun. I'd say, that's way more. I don't know where you are exactly. It's all sort of arbitrary. But that's way more than an 85% tune. You got a great flying copter there. I have nothing to say about it. I will not. Just don't change the thing. Or if you change anything, be ready to change it back if it makes it worse, not better. That copter is... You may feel things when you fly it that you wish were different, but I can't see them in the video at all. Next. Okay. 23, 27. That was 196. Here's 2197. Topzimmy asks, bad vibrations. Isn't that a Beach Boys song? Right? I think so. You changed out a rough motor. You have Schizo edition motors with the ceramic bearings too. Those are good smooth motors. TBS Power Cube Core Pro Unify Pro. 30-second clip of DVR footage. So we don't have Blackbox, unfortunately. Well, we'll still take a look. If just one motor is getting really warm, you might have a screw touching the motor. Maybe. If the screw is too long, it will touch the motor windings and create a short between the motor winding and the frame, and the motor will get hot or warm. It's usually not the case that just one motor gets warmer than the others. If you could have a motor with a bad bearing and it's having to work more and it's generating more friction, but it's a new motor, so that's not the case. That's a little weird if you have just one motor that's getting warmer than the others. Usually, like, if your CG is slightly off, then sometimes, like, the back motors will get hotter than the front motors. But if just one of the motors is warm, well, your CG isn't off to the back left, right? Oh, thank you for pointing that out. The black box is at the bottom. He said he didn't know much about Blackbox, but I see. He meant he didn't know about interpreting the black box. I thought he meant he didn't know about getting the black box out of the copter. Let's look at the video. Cute. I don't think we're going to have any audio here. Do we have audio? No. All right. Let's look at the video. Yeah, that is pretty bumpy. So one of the things I'm looking for is if it's tuning related, then oftentimes it will be tied to the throttle. If you have tuning related vibrations, then oftentimes as you raise the throttle, they'll get worse, and as you lower the throttle, they'll get better. And if you have the same or mostly the same amount of vibration at low throttle as at mid throttle or even high throttle, then it suggests it may not be a tuning thing. Also, you look for things like prop wash oscillation. So there was a point where he raised the throttle a little, and then he lowered the throttle, and as his copter fell, just as he raised the throttle to catch himself, I watched to see if I saw any sign of prop wash oscillation coming out, which might indicate that this is a tuning issue. But if the copter falls and you sort of catch it and you're going up and down and it's not sort of, you're getting oscillations at the bottom of those periods, then it's probably not a tuning issue. So this is, at first glance, is not feeling like a tuning issue, just looking at the character of the oscillations. Oh, yeah. Let's see. I don't want the zip. I want the TXT. Now it's going to... Let's see. These are the motors. All right. We can see that the motors are going bonkers here. Just all over the place, up and down. This is... Yeah, that's no good. So that suggests that what we've got here is a real vibration in the copter, as opposed to like the camera is loose. If the camera is loose, then you'll see vibrations, but the motors and the gyros and the PID controller won't respond to them. Let's look at the gyros. And we'll zoom out and we'll turn smoothing off. I'm almost scared to do it. Oh, smoothing is off. Yeah, so we can see we have crazy, crazy noisy gyros here. And also notice that is on the pitch axis and the roll axis, but the yaw axis is pretty thin. Do you see how the yellow line is pretty thin in the center, whereas the other two lines are very thick? So that's interesting. Let's look at your PID traces. I see that the D gain is going nuts. The D gain, you can have a chicken and the egg situation, where if the D gain is going nuts, it could be because your gyro is going nuts, and the D gain is just responding to the crazy gyro. But if your D gains are super high, you can be in a situation where the gyro is not really super noisy, but the D gain is flipping out so much, it's dragging the gyro around and making the gyro noisy. So the only way to answer that question is to turn your D gains way down and see if the gyro stays noisy. When the D gain is noisy and the gyro is noisy, you can't easily tell which is causing it and which is the effect. So let's look at your D gains. And your D gains are 18 and 18, which is not particularly high, but for some setups, perhaps it would be too high. In the interest of troubleshooting, the next thing I would suggest is to turn your D gains down. Let's say you could even turn them all the way down to 0. Let's just say that. Turn your D gains to 0. And what you'll see is that on the pitch and the roll axis, this yellow line will just be a flat line. At that point, the next thing to do is to go back and look at your gyros. And do your gyros still look super noisy? If you turn your D gains down and your gyros still look super noisy, you have a vibration issue. If you turn your D gains down and your gyros clean up, then your D gain was too high. But your D gains are not super high. I think they're not super high. So probably I think you have a vibration issue. So you've ruled out your motors, and probably we can rule out your props. You probably tried a fresh set of props. I think the place I would, especially because this is only happening on pitch and roll but not on yaw, I would be looking at the gyro mounting. Look at your flight controller mounting. And I wonder if maybe you've got some kind of a broken standoff or a loose screw, and it's flapping around on those axes, on the pitch and the roll axis, but not on the yaw axis. That's what I would look at. Okay. That was 2197. Now we're going to go on to 2199. Your motor is getting, by the way, going back, your motor is getting warm probably because either your gyro is so noisy or your D-gain is so noisy that the D-gain is making the motor warm. That's my guess about that. The falling prop wash wobble. Mountain Mike, this is the ultimate challenge. This is the final exam of PID tuning graduate course, is when you're falling at 0 throttle, and then just as you raise the throttle, boom, you get that little wobble. I'm sorry, man. I don't have a definitive way of getting rid of that. That is present on most of my copters. The answer to how to get rid of that is to learn to manage your throttle better. The one thing that does get rid of it is raising min throttle, so that the motors, because the problem is that the motors are spinning so slowly, and then as they start to spin up, everything gets a little crazy. But so if you don't ever let the motors spin slowly, you'll never be in that situation. But of course, we don't want to raise min throttle because it makes the copter fly in a way that we don't like. It makes the copter floaty, and you get less inverted hang time. If you really want to get rid of the falling prop wash wobble, you can try to tune it out, and sometimes you might be able to get D gain and P gain just right to get rid of it. But I'm not the guy to tell you exactly how to do it. I can't do it consistently. And so I can't help you there. What I would say is if you really want to get rid of that, don't lower your throttle so low on those big long drops. Leave your throttle up a little bit so that the motors don't spin down as much. And then when you start to raise the throttle, things won't be as destabilized. That's what I would say. David suggests that last one was a loose mounted battery shaking the HD cam, which I don't think it was because we saw it in the gyro. And if it was just shaking the HD cam, I wonder if you're even talking about the same thing I'm talking about, actually. Ron, that's an interesting question. Any unique PID tuning issues to consider on a 3D reversible quad? Good question. I don't know about that. I've never flown 3D. I've kind of been tempted to get into 3D after watching those Rotor Riot videos with Zoe. I'm kind of curious about it, but worth a try. Tommy, I'm sipping on lemonade. Just plain old lemonade. Country time lemonade. Sway FPV, if you have high throttle oscillations, calibrate your top end, your throttle top end. I have a video on that if you want. And use TPA. That's what I would say. Alrighty. That was 2197. And now we're moving on to 2199. 134.32. Oh, I'm sorry. I already did that one. Hang on. I already did that one. Mountain Mike, that's what I got for you. I can't help you any more than that, than what to tell you. But here's one more thing I would say to you, Mountain Mike. Don't be afraid of the numbers. If you have to raise your roll D gain to 65 and it makes the copter fly good and the motors aren't hot, don't be afraid of the fact that it's a scary number. Just pay attention to the signs that it's too high, like hot motors. And if you're running ultra high D gains and like you break a prop, you know how sometimes you break a prop and you got 2 out of 3 blades on your prop and you're like, I'll fly it in. And you fly it in and it's going, but it's still flyable. Well, if you have ultra high D gains, you're going to burn a motor if you do that because you're so on the edge already. As soon as things change, you're going to smoke something. So if you're going to run D gains in the 45, 50, even 60 range, know that the minute you bend a bell or bend a shaft or bend a prop, the whole thing is going to go crazy, okay? So be aware of that and don't push it if you're flying in that level. But, you know, if that's what you got to do to get rid of that last little bit of prop wash, that's what you got to do. That's $21.99. We're going to go to $22.12. Can I say hi to your wife, Stacy? Steve Redling asks if I can say hi to his wife, Stacy. Hi, Stacy. How are you doing? It's a live stream. I'm a guy. I'm sitting in my office. I'm talking about Blackbox. It's kind of like a television show, except I don't get paid very much, and I'm very bad at it. But on the other hand, nerds like your husband can hang out with nerds like me without ever leaving our homes or having to look each other in the eye, which I think we all agree for nerds is really what we're looking for. Chalurker asks, thank you, Chalurker, for the super noob one. All these hard questions make me look really bad when I can't answer them. Please send me some easy questions that I can look really smart when I answer them. After you arm and throttle up, it shudders and won't take off. Dropping and re-raising the problem makes the problem go away. I hate intermittent problems. When a problem goes away and I have no idea why it went away, I don't like that because it could come back. It could come back and I don't know why. I want to fix it. And I agree that you shouldn't fly it. If it might drop out of the sky randomly, you got to solve the problem. Unfortunately, as much as you would like to just freaking go fly, you got to figure it out. If you arm and throttle up, so hold on. If I hold it and arm and throttle up, it doesn't do it. Don't do that. Remember back when we had weak little wimpy quadcopters? And you could hold them in your hand and arm it, and you go, oh, interesting, what's it doing? There was a story from somebody on, I guess it was the Betaflight thread, and he did that, and he turned it, and it went, whoosh! And like, it cut his hand up really bad. Don't arm your copter and hold it in your hand. That's a bad idea. If you see someone doing that, they shouldn't do that. And I'm talking to you pros who hold it in your hand and take off from your hand. You're setting a bad example. And it's dangerous for you too, no matter how much you think it's cool and how much you think you're getting away with it. Don't do it. And the same for you guys who fly it towards yourself and land it and catch it in your hand. You're setting a bad example, and you shouldn't do that. I'm chastising you. I go, and I shake my finger. So don't do that, okay? That's not safe. Okay, but you can't get it to do it. You throttle up, and it shudders and won't take off. Let's think about what could cause that. Excess D-gain wouldn't cause that. Excess D-gain would make the copter shudder and make the motor spin up and fly to the moon. So that's not it. What makes a copter not take off? The thing that makes a copter not take off is if it's not making thrust. If you think about it, anything that's wrong with a copter that doesn't prevent it from making thrust will result in it taking off. It might not take off in any particular direction or be controllable, but it will take off. So if you raise the throttle and the copter doesn't take off, it's not making thrust. So now we got to ask, what could cause the copter to not make thrust? Well, one of the things could be that the throttle is not going up. But here we've got a case where if you drop and re-raise the throttle, it works. Maybe the potentiometer in your transmitter is bad. It's not working right. And when you drop and re-raise it, it sort of fixes it. You can check that by looking at the receivers tab. And you can see if when you raise the throttle, it consistently goes from 1,000 to 2,000 microseconds. Or sometimes when you raise the throttle, does it just stay down at 1,100? That would indicate that you had a problem with your transmitter. If your throttle consistently works in the receivers tab, then you can know that as you raise the throttle, the flight controller should be throttling up. So then why would the throttle go up but the motors not spin up and not make thrust? And there's a very interesting phenomena here. The PID loop will always try and maintain the copter's attitude. Here we go. Got a copter here. By the way, in case you're wondering, this is the Gobi 180 from Indestructible Quads. There's this guy out of New York City. He builds these. He sells them. They're ready. He builds ready-to-fly kits or ARF kits. It's all off-the-shelf components, right, that you could buy, but he builds them for you and he ships them to you. So that's what this is, in case you're wondering. And he paints this red on the side, which I think that definitely makes it go like 10% faster, right? Definitely. So think about what the PID loop is doing when you raise the throttle. You are not commanding any pitch or roll, so the copter must stay level. As you raise the throttle, let's say you've got one motor that isn't making enough thrust. Since that motor is not making enough thrust, the copter will tend to tilt towards that motor. When that happens, the PID loop will go, no, 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 don't do that. And the PID loop will slow the other motors down to bring the copter back to the attitude that it's supposed to be at. So the whole PID loop, the whole copter is only ever as strong as the weakest motor. Okay? So if you have one motor with, for example, a loose prop, and that's what I'm going to go with for this one. If you have a loose prop, then as you raise the throttle, that motor will not make enough thrust or any thrust, and the other motors they'll constantly be trying to speed up, but no, they can't. Like a dog pulling at the end of a leash. Let me go, let me go. And that one motor is like, sorry guys, they can't make any thrust. And the other motors are like, oh, well, guess what can we do? So I think what I'm going to go with on this one is that there's a motor that's not making thrust. And if that's true, we will see the PID loop go to full. And that will be our indication that the motor's not making thrust. Let's see. Let's take a look at your black box now that I have guessed as to what it's going to be. Now, where did he say to look? Log 15 of 17, around 126. Here's the problem. Well, you didn't just arm. Okay, but say you're low throttle. You throttle up. Is that it? Let's look at the motors. So if there was one motor that was not making thrust and that was your problem, we would see one of these motors be way higher than the other three. Since we don't see that, I don't think that's the problem. But I can't be sure. No. I do see that the motor's outputs are not getting very high. That's a tough one. I don't think we're going to see anything weird in the PID loop. Well, your D gain is going crazy, that's for sure. Way excessive D gain. Is that always true? Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Look here. Look at the D term. Nothing, right? Nothing. 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 But then suddenly, here's the problem area. Boom, crazy D term. So why did the D term flip out and go crazy? And that's why he's having trouble taking off. I suppose the copter is kind of just shaking itself, and maybe it doesn't even look like you throttled up. It looks like you backed the throttle down because you saw the copter kind of flipping out. So why did this change? Well, your D gain certainly didn't change, did it? If your D gain changed, we would see, like you're using in-flight adjustments, we would see that indicated here in the black box, and we don't. So the D gain is 18, 18, and 20, not excessive. The only thing that could cause the D term to flip out like this, if the D gain didn't change, is that the gyro changed. So now let's look at the gyro. If you got more vibration somehow, then it would cause the D term to flip out. Yeah. So if we look here, the gyro is really clean. Let me turn the smoothing off. The gyro is really clean, really clean, really clean, till we get to this problem area, and the gyro is crazy noisy. So something has changed mechanically about your copter between these two scenarios to cause a lot of vibration to get into the flight controller. The flight controller, it seems like maybe it's a motor. Something has gone different about a motor. But it's hard to imagine what that could be to make this much difference in vibration. My first guess would be to check the flight controller. Yeah. And I also notice that it's just the pitch and the roll axis, not the yaw axis. That's the second time we've seen that. So my guess would be that's something to do with the flight controller mounting, where sometimes the flight controller is secure and other times the flight controller is being vibrated against. But now here, look here, clean again, right? Gyro's clean, crazy dirty. Nothing about your tune is causing this because nothing about your tune has changed, right? You didn't change your gains. So something mechanical, physical is happening to make a whole lot more vibration. And sometimes it happens and other times it doesn't. And that's what you got to figure out. That's the answer to your question. I feel like that's a good answer too. We didn't solve this one because your copter's not sitting in front of me. I can't look at it. But I think it's really definitive what the problem is. The gyro is just telling us very clearly something is making a ton of vibration in the times when you have the problem, and it's just not there at all. It's gone in the times where you're not having the problem. Okay. That's 2212. We're going to look at 22. Wow, you've done a ton of them. I'm super psyched at how many we've done. I'm talking as a dog. Interesting. Maybe he chipped a prop. Could be. But that's not what he said, though, is it? He said he lowers the throttle and then raises it again, and suddenly it's fine. He didn't say he changed his props. So, and you can see at the beginning of the log, he's fine. In the middle of the log, he has the problem. At the end of the log, he's fine again. He didn't change his props between those scenarios. So there you go. So I don't think that's it. This is badzz. Try to use D term cut hertz equals 20. Well, you learned why not to do that, right? That's so never take your D term cut hertz. By the way, what are you flying that you still have D term cut hertz? That's, what is this, Betaflight 1 something? I don't know. The fact that you're referring to D term cut hertz makes me wonder what version of CleanFlight 112. Oh, okay, sorry. CleanFlight 112 had D term cut hertz. I just assume everyone in the world is running Betaflight, right? Gosh. Never take D term low pass below, let's say 40 hertz. Back when Betaflight, back before Betaflight, when there wasn't a Betaflight, it was just the Boris B builds of CleanFlight. And by the way, can I show you something? Look at this. Hang on. I'm fine. Oh, I don't have it anymore. I used to have in my archive the very first CleanFlight 1.9 with Boris's D-term low-pass filter in it. I just, it was nice to, oh, look, it's like a museum archive. Oh, well, I don't have it anymore. We used to run, in those days, we used to run D-term filters as low as like 8 hertz. 8 hertz. So low. And it made super smooth lines. But it delayed the heck out of the D-term. And what we discovered was that having low latency was more important than having super smooth lines in Blackbox. And time went on, okay? So today, in today's world, with Betaflight, I don't know how CleanFlight 1.12, maybe CleanFlight 1.12, I'm not sure how the scaling and the algorithm was there. But on the modern versions of Betaflight and CleanFlight 1.13, I really don't think you need to be that low. Certainly on Betaflight, below about 40 hertz is not going to be effective. So if you're running Gyro LPF 42, we all used to run that way before there was a Betaflight. And that was just what we ran with no D term. It flies not great, does it? So yeah. I think that you are overthinking it here when saying that the D term is not at 0 when the gyro hits max or min. Remember that when you're looking at Blackbox, there are interpolated data points, and you're not seeing literally every single cycle's worth of data. So, yeah. D. So be careful there. And D, it may be a derivative. D is not necessarily a derivative of the gyro. It may be a derivative of the error. Especially in Betaflight, it can be some combination of both. So your mathematical analysis is technically correct, but practically not necessarily correct. Let's take a look at your log and let's see what we can come up with. So I think you're just looking for general advice, despite the fact that there are lots of little details in there about this and that we could quibble about. 4030. Viking FPV, I have no idea why you're seeing Maddie stunts, but it could be worse. Maddie stunts is awesome. We'll look at your gyros first. Your gyros are super clean. I would expect them to be super clean because you're running CleanFlight 1.12 and you got a lot of filtering. Especially if you're running gyro LPF of 42, you're going to have a ton of filtering there. So notice, guys, in the gyros that as you're raising and lowering the throttle, the pitch and the roll are responding to that, even though the pitch and the roll stick is centered. So your eye gains are too low, is what I would say. Because here, as you pump the throttle, the copter is moving on the pitch and the roll axis. It's not staying steady. And that generally means the eye gains are too low. Although all the latency from your filtering is not helping. Here's a longer flight. Let's look at some PIDs. Sort of constant oscillations on the P term. But if we zoom into it, we see that that's not really there. And the D term is not doing much. The copter feels undertuned. It's not very active, but you're just hovering. So yeah, it's hard. You can't really judge a tune. Look what he's doing. Look at the sticks. You're basically hovering and are twitching back and forth. I don't feel like I can really judge a tune with that flying. You're just not doing very much. And there's not a lot to see to judge the tune, I'm afraid to say. So here's what I would say. Go to CleanFlight 1.13 or Betaflight 3.0 if you feel adventuresome. It gives you more options for tuning the gyro. You have in CleanFlight 1.13, you have gyro soft filter, just like you have D-term soft filter in CleanFlight 1.12. And that will give you more options to tune the gyro filter than just 188, 42, 98, right? But you know how you do have soft gyro LPF hertz? If you have soft gyro LPF hertz, then you should run gyro LPF is off or 256 or whatever. But what I would say is I'm afraid that I can't really judge your tune very much because there doesn't seem to be very aggressive flying. And yeah, and you should be running gyro sync if you have it, and a 1000 loop time if you don't have it. 500 faster loop times without gyro sync are kind of a waste. I think you should run at 1000 if you're on CleanFlight 1.12. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, that's some advice, I suppose, but without more aggressive flying, I'm not sure I can give much better advice. And especially on a very, very old version of CleanFlight, it's a little difficult to say. There you go. A drunk tuning. Frank Ruiz, if you watch some of my older videos where I was drinking gin, you kind of can see that. I wasn't super drunk, but I wasn't super sober either. Thank you for the support, MKNE Lab. I love my patrons. If you are one of my patrons, we're almost ready to close up here. If you are one of my patrons, you get access to... Oh, hang on. Hello? There you go. Come on, computer. Get with it. There you go. You get access to a super secret private Slack chat room. Like you all don't have enough Slacks to be in. Where you can hang out with me and talk about whatever you want to talk about. And you also get access to daily cat pictures, where my patrons and myself post pictures of our cats. So that, I mean, that's worth $1 a month right there. A separate one for tuning. So, yeah. Let's see. 157.25. We're almost done here, folks. I can't, you know what? I can't do it. I can't mention my Patreon without at least plugging the URL. In case anyone's watching who's like, he had a Patreon? I had no idea he had a Patreon. Oh my God, I must support him. No, that's not it. I'm terrible at this. There we go. The drone racing engineer. There you go. Let's see if we can squeeze in one more. 2213, 2218. Listen, the Batchy08 says, if I knew a smidgen of what you know, tuning my quad would be in perfect tune. Listen, dude, I just sit down and think about this stuff, and I don't mean to suggest that I don't have an aptitude, because I obviously do have an aptitude. Not everybody could just sit down, think about this, and get where I am. But at the end of the day, it's just take a methodical approach, study it, listen to what other people are saying, absorb what they're saying, get out there and fly, and don't just fly and like screw around. I mean, there's a place for that, but lower your P gain, feel how the copter feels, raise your P gain, feel how the copter feels. You know, just practice, you know, feel it out and figure it out, and you can learn how to tune. This does not look like a simple one, so we're going to hold this one off, and we're going to go out. I'll answer a few questions going out. We'll call that one. Let's see, how many did we do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in 2 hours. Yes, I feel good about that. James, 121, you're a Patreon. Where is the Slack info? Message me on Patreon or email me or whatever with your email address and ask to join the Slack. Okay? I didn't want to just invite all my patrons because I didn't want to spam you. But if you're a patron and you want to be on the Slack, just message me. Preferably on Patreon is the easiest place to do it, and give me your email address. I'll add you. What do I think of the FC from Furious FPV? Well, I mean, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to put it on a build. I have one. I have the flight controller and the OSD VTX board. We're going to give it a go. I'm super excited about it because the flight controller and the daughter board give you a PDB, an OSD, a flight controller, and a video transmitter. The only thing missing is an SD card slot. But a little bird today told me that might be coming in the future. And it's just all in one integrated unit. You can adjust the PIDs using the OSD. It's a nice little combination. A question of price, of course, but it's pretty. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about Furious FPV because it's been a long time since I've seen so much crazy innovation just all in one place coming from kind of basically just one guy. He's got the piggyback OSD. Look at this. Hang on. If you haven't seen this, you're going to love this. The piggyback OSD. Look at this. Can you freaking believe this? How do you like that? That's an OSD. and it's a full like Betaflight OSD. You can adjust PIDs, you can adjust like MultiWii, right? It's like totally configurable, interfaces with your flight controller, and just sits right there on the back of your camera. Isn't that awesome? Like that's just such a nice innovative thing. Furious is doing some really cool stuff. Of course, this, the True D diversity, right? Now they didn't invent that from scratch, but like they just are really cranking out exciting, interesting products. And so I hope that they continue to do that, because it's always good to have one person out there pushing the whole industry forward, because other people are looking at what Furious is doing and going, hey, we got to get in on that. And that's not to say that Furious is the only one innovating. Other people are innovating too. There's a lot of innovative products out there. But usually what you see is that, like, for example, UBAD, right? UBAD has the LaForge. The LaForge is a very innovative product. But if you look at UBAD's whole product line, the UBAD is super innovative, and their other stuff is great stuff, but, like, it doesn't, like, blow your mind. But if you look at Furious's website, like, literally half their products, you're like, whoa, oh, wow, So I'm excited about that. Does it have a current sensor? Well, I mean, I think it does. I think the Combini does, but the Pico BLX does not, is what I remember. The Combini has a current sensor. The Pico BLX does not. That's what I think. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. It is 11:02 p.m. Live stream's been going for 2 hours. Thank you, Ben. You're awesome, too. You're awesome. Y'all are awesome. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for supporting me in all the ways that you do, whether it's financially or just by participating in comments on my videos. All the ways that you participate in watching the videos, helping my view count go up and my subscriber count go up. And, it's really, I'm having a great time, and I really appreciate you guys helping make it happen. We're going to close out this live stream, and that's 2 in a row. So we'll see when the next one comes up. We made a pretty big dent here in these 22, 13. Oh, yeah, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 5 left. But by the time I do the next live stream, I'm sure it'll be 20 again. But if I didn't get to yours, I apologize. I apologize especially to whoever 2218 is. Oh, so close, but you didn't make it. I'll get you next time. And there you go. That's it. Happy flying.